Hello and welcome to ABC News Stream live at Parliament in the United Kingdom. I'm James Longman and we are just witnessing the fallout from an extraordinary election. Theresa May's Conservative Party has not got enough seats to form a government. They have come out of this with 319 seats in Parliament. Now that means that the Conservative Party is the biggest party in the Parliament here in the United Kingdom, but that means they don't have enough seats to form a government. This is something that was totally unexpected. When this election campaign kicked off just a few weeks ago, she was very definitely the favourite. People looked at the Conservatives as being able to get maybe 50, 60, 70. People were even talking about a 100-seat majority over the Labour Party, but it's been extraordinarily unexpected, this result. You can just hear perhaps the sound of Big Ben behind me as we're outside the Palace of Westminster, and it has caused a furore here in the UK. I mean, I just want to show you now, look, I mean, we are surrounded by the world's press because this is not just important for the United Kingdom, this is important for the rest of the world and particularly for Europe, because this election was all about Brexit, or at least we thought it was. What happens to this country after we leave the EU, and what happens more precisely in the negotiations in order to leave the European Union. Remember, we had a referendum to decide whether or not we wanted in this country to stay in Europe or leave. The country voted to leave, and so Theresa May said she wanted to fight an election in order to, she said, to make her government more strong and stable to be able to go into those negotiations, because they only start in 10 days' time. But boy, have things changed now. Let's just keep walking through here. You can see just how many people have turned out, because the big surprise as well has been the Labour Party. People wrote Jeremy Corbyn off at the beginning of this campaign. In fact, you know, a lot of critics said Theresa May's only called it because she was so sure that she would beat Jeremy Corbyn. He was low in the polls. But what has happened is that his entire campaign really took off. He was able to bring people from all walks of life to support him, particularly young people. About 63% of those between ages 18 to 35, they voted for Jeremy Corbyn. That's a lot of people. 1 million more voters came out. We think most of those would have been young people. He managed to get that vote out, and we thought that that wouldn't matter because young people don't tend to live in places in, you know, what we call in the UK marginal constituencies, and what people in the United States call swing states. So he has had a great night, but again, he hasn't got quite enough to win and have a form a government, because he's got 261 seats. You need 326 in the system here in the United Kingdom to form a government in that building right there, but he hasn't got that either. So what Theresa May has said she's going to do is form a coalition. Now with who? Because she's got 319 seats. Like I said, she needs to get to 326. She's decided to form a coalition with one of the smaller parties in our parliament. That's the DUP. Now, they are a small party of only 10, they've got 10 seats, but she said she's going to form with them. That'll push her over the limit, but it does leave her in a very unstable situation. I do want to show you what's happened this morning with our newspapers, because, you know, and by the way, the UK press in this country has by and large been supportive of the Conservative Party. Most of our newspapers, the biggest selling ones anyway, they tend to support the Conservatives. But this morning it was a huge surprise. You know, the Sun, which is one of our biggest newspapers, mayhem, they say. Labour have won 34 seats. It's a big shock for them, and Tories fail on the majority. Now, her position as leader is definitely going to come under question. You know, she went into this, like I said, quite popular. People didn't really know what to make of her, but she was thought of as being quite strong, in the mould of Margaret Thatcher perhaps. But now with this small number of seats that she's been able to win, or at least not enough for a majority government, that is her position is going to come into question. You know, even the Daily Mirror has always been pretty against her, but hanging by a thread, they say. And there's Jeremy Corbyn there with his thumbs up. No one thought that he was going to be able to do this. He comes from the fringes of the Labour Party, from the left of the Labour Party. A lot of people kind of said, well, this guy is never going to be able to appeal to the masses in the United Kingdom. He's got some pretty extreme policies when it comes to tax. For instance, he wants to lower the tax rate and make high earners really pay a lot more tax. He wants to give education, college education, he wants to make entirely free in this country, as it always used to be before the Conservatives changed that policy. So that was very popular, and that's probably part of the reason why so many young people came out to vote for him. But a lot of critics will say, well, how is he going to pay for it? And you know, the Daily Mail, one of our biggest selling newspapers, Britain on a knife edge. They had backed the Conservatives throughout this campaign, and they and basically everyone else in total shock about what to do. Now, just a word on these Brexit negotiations, because they will happen in just 10 days' time. That is the negotiations that this country has to go into in order to figure out the terms under which we leave the European Union. Theresa May said from the very start she wanted to make sure that there was strong and stable leadership going into those negotiations, that she was the only person who was going to be able to do it. Well, she's now, instead of focusing on those negotiations, she may now have to focus on forming this coalition government. Who is she going to send to Europe to be able to make sure that the UK gets the best deal? She spoke just earlier today outside of Downing Street. I have to say, she spoke in a way that sounded like she had won. She'd got well over the majority. She surprised everyone with her tone, basically saying that she was going to form that government, she was going to pull the country forward. But I think a lot of people now will say Theresa May remains in power as Prime Minister, but a lot of people within the Conservative Party are going to want to start to probably make manoeuvres to see if they can replace her, because she really wasn't, a lot of people consider, particularly strong during the election campaign. She fumbled a lot. She kept using this same sentence, strong and stable, strong and stable. People said, well, why can't you talk like a human being? So she was, and she also didn't speak very much to journalists. I mean, she didn't want to speak to people like you, people like me, and she didn't want to debate Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, on the other hand, after people saying he was going to run a shambolic campaign, he actually went out and he attracted crowds larger than Churchill managed to. This is the guy who was pulling in crowds from all over the country to his rallies. So this, like I said, it's a huge, huge shock. And I mean, you can see just the amount of press now which has descended on London, because you know, we seem to be going through this political turmoil on an almost monthly basis. We had the election in 2015, which no one predicted that the Tories would get an entire majority. We then had the Brexit referendum, which no one thought we were actually going to want to leave. And now this election where we thought that, you know, Theresa May was going to end up with a huge majority. It's just one thing after another. And now some people even predicting there could even be another election later this year or perhaps next year, because you can't really run a country on such weird numbers. For none of the parties, the numbers are really good enough to be able to form strong governments. So for now, that's it from us, but please stay watching ABC News all day, because this is a tremendously important story. And I'm James Longman, here for ABC News Stream Live.